Welcome to Born to Unicorn. In this episode, we have in Amr Shady, a good friend of mine and also an Endeavor entrepreneur. He is the founder of TA Telecom, co-founder and ex-CEO of Tribal Credit, and board member at Endeavor Egypt. And currently, he is the founder of a new company and the CEO of Accor Partners. He will tell us a little bit more about that later. So, Amir, welcome to Born to Unicorn.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks so much, Juan, for having me.
You've done everything in context of complexity and chaos. So I would like to start with what do you think were the drivers of success that no spreadsheet can predict?
Well, a few things. I mean, we've honestly been through very good times and very hard times. For context, I mean, when we were launching it, Tribal Credit actually was born out of research that I did with some partners as well. Back in NYU, we were doing a Master of Science in Analytics. So we started that as an analytics company, as an AI company. And we tried to go to market with very different things. The market was very big on, for example, data-driven VC, and we kind of tested a little bit using our analytics for that. Had some customers, some of the top VCs, and then we quickly tested the product. We went into a world where it wasn't really, at that time, it wasn't really getting us to scale. So we switched to a fintech pivot and we started applying kind of all the analytics and AI and the underwriting that we have to actually give financial services to companies in emerging markets, which was what Tribal Credit was born out of. And then we were hit with COVID. And, people started freaking out. We started freaking out. We had just launched 6 months in or less. And then now with everything that's happening in COVID, we had to readjust. We also had to find ways where we can offer credit with a very small seed round and lend like these businesses, even if it's 30, 40 days, but it's still coming out of equity. And then just scale that. Then the good times came and we started kind of growing the company very fast. We started seeing more flow of capital, but also capital kind of crashed on us. So we've been kind of in a lot of the ups and downs. And I wouldn't say predictor of success, but explicitly, but some of the factors that allowed us to be able to see opportunities and stay afloat for a longer time than we should have, honestly, at these tough times were number one, we were just iterating very fast. So we really did not give up pretty early in terms of how things were working out and what's working and what's not. So we came to be in touch with reality a little bit faster and just find ways that allows us to iterate super fast on ideas. So actually, between what used to be Angel Corp and Tribal Credit, there were maybe 4 or 5 different experiments. And they were very fast experiments. So that really helped us get to a state that was, I would say, very successful for us to take the IP that we've created and move it into something that became valuable later on. During the times of COVID, again, it was the speed of decision making that made a big difference for us. Like we realized what was happening. We decided super fast to make certain decisions. And then as we kind of continued the process, it was actually staying close to customers that was a predictor of success in our case. With Tribal Credit, one of the important things during the seed and Series A, once you figure out what you're doing and things are moving, then just being super close to customers, iterating very fast again with customers. So maybe, reflecting on everything that we've been talking about so far, I would say just being pretty fast and trying to learn fast, get products out in market fast. I think that's been helpful for us. And honestly, we got hurt when we were not doing decisions fast enough. That started to hurt us a little bit. And there are decisions that you need to take slow and to be more thoughtful about, but it's also kind of the art of understanding which one's which.
How important it was for you to, to live in a country where everything changes all the time and it's chaotic?
Yeah, I mean, it's really built a muscle, I would say, being in some of these environments, like building in other markets, where you're always kind of surprised with very unexpected things. You always think of it as one of these games, when you're walking on a tightrope and you're trying to balance everything and you're balancing your business and you're carrying everything. But then all of a sudden you see like there are people that are throwing rocks and stones and, pads at you, whatever. So we got used to back in the day when I was operating in Middle East Africa and parts of Asia. That it's pretty hard. Like you need to deal with the unexpected stuff from government, stuff from competition that doesn't make sense, stuff from customers, and even like your own employees. So we got used to build that muscle and got used to kind of seeing that state, which allowed us to, I would say, not be surprised or kind of freeze in kind of the headlights, right? Like a deer. Like just we were able to kind of just iterate fast and move fast and be able to make these decisions and not get stuck on it. But we've seen other examples. I mean, honestly, with Tribal, like we've been operating in a lot of markets. We were operating in LATAM as well. We were launching in kind of Brazil, live in Mexico. We were launching Chile, Colombia, Peru. So I would say it was very we did see more and more surprises, and I think once the organization gets to a certain stage and you have a lot of decision makers around the table, as a CEO, you need to really try to put discipline in the team and a process in the team that allows you to identify what kind of decision are we making right now, and based on that, like understand how fast we need to decide and who needs to decide and which decisions you need to be part of versus which decisions it should be taken otherwise. So we ended up kind of reading a lot about how decision making was happening in Coinbase and LinkedIn and adopting a lot of these frameworks that enabled us to decide fast and move fast again.
You mentioned something very interesting, that is the team, right? Because
Yeah.
normally you're an entrepreneur and you have the resilience to go and do crazy things. You just mentioned something that even for an entrepreneur is crazy, like being from Egypt and opening Latin America, which each country is still different, because the idea is that Latin American is a homogeneous region, is just laughable. And one of those countries was Brazil, that is a very complex market. So that's crazy, but you can expect that from an entrepreneur. But you mentioned, right, a few seconds ago, that you're the team, and
Yeah.
there is a phrase that I like, that is, you are hired by your skills, but you are tested, or you are, let's say, you are not fired, let's say, by how you perform inside a team. How do
Mhm.
you hire people that can follow you in these crazy journeys, that because when you hire them, probably it's about the skills, but then they get into a company that the speed is 10 times the normal speed of any other company, that you come with an idea, probably got to change something, you prove something that didn't work, you got to change that again. So you need people that has something, right, else besides just the skills, right?
That's true. That's true. And I mean, it's a testing ground, and sometimes and sometimes you don't. Like, sometimes you get a referral, an intro to someone that comes very highly recommended from, other folks, whether it's maybe somebody in a board or another teammate, or even a friend, or even a VC that would recommend a hire. And then some of them will work really well and some of them will struggle. And it has nothing to do maybe with the person. It's just sometimes the mismatch between the stage of the company, and sometimes it could be even the role that they're coming in on. So I would say we try to make the best out of folks that we know are able to handle kind of the uncertainty and the pace of a startup world and are okay with the constant change that can potentially come. and the pace of that change. But I mean, it's a testing ground. Startups are a testing ground in every single phase, and people will come, and you just need to identify. And one of the biggest mistakes, I would say, is that we did in some of these roles, we did not make a fast decision to say that there's a mismatch. And these were probably some of our, one of my biggest learnings is that you really need to make quick decisions fast. So I know a lot of people talk about, oh, you need to hire A players and, hire A players. But of course, nobody's going out there trying to hire a C player, like, yeah, who's trying to do that? Right. So, but I think the important thing is actually, if you do identify a B or a C player, that you need to be super fast in kind of a decision, because it may seem like a reversible decision, but if you wait long enough, this decision is going to damage the company in a way that could be very much irreversible, right? And the more senior they are, the harder it is to kind of roll back some of that stuff. So I'd say it's hard to say, like, how do you do that and what do you look for? You're going to get people that look like amazing talent, and many of them are. But the one thing I would just leave with many people is the one big lesson that I actually leave for myself even is that you just need to really act super fast when something's not working and it's not working.
And when you start, a company from scratch, right? The company goes through different process, and during these processes, the company looks different, right? So at the beginning, you're fast. There's not a lot of processes. At some point, the company has a size that need process, like a balance between process and speed. And at some point, the company needs to stabilize, right? And more processes, and probably a different type of management team. You went through all those processes because you grew companies very, very from zero to large size, right?
Yeah.
How do you know at which specific moment you gotta start like changing, steering a little bit on, route? Right now we need speed and only speed. Right now we need speed and some type of, you know, um, training wheels, right? And then we need just, processes and organization, and to stabilize the company, because now we are a corporation. We need, I don't know, processes for hiring people, processes for everything, because when your company is small, you have the vision and you can translate that vision into every decision. At some point, you have so many people in the middle of you and where the decisions are being made, that it's impossible for you to be involved in those decisions, or even make those decisions flow through the organization. So you need a process that allows everybody to behave in a very specific manner to make the company work properly. How do you do that part, right? Because probably on the other side of the screen, there's a lot of people that are thinking, growing their company, and thinking, okay, I know how to start a company from scratch. I have that in my DNA, but there is so many things that I don't know while my company started growing, right?
Yeah, it's true. And honestly, I can't tell you that there is kind of that easy telltale sign of this is when I need process and when I don't. But I think as you're going through that process, the process of building a startup in many cases it comes down to, like, what are we trying to de-risk right now? And what is kind of in terms of goals, and what are we trying to solve? What is it that is important for us to achieve? And I know there's been a lot of controversy around OKRs, but some people love them, some people hate them. I found them to be very, very helpful to help us guide in terms of the direction that we want to go. So it's just understanding, like, these are the things that we need to de-risk. These are the things that we're trying to achieve as part of our OKRs, and hence we are moving towards that. Now, OKRs, I would say, are kind of really done to change the business, and there you don't have a process. Like in many cases, you may have some bodies, but the reason why we look at them as OKRs versus KPIs is because we want to bring change to that, whether it's a process or establish a process or. Um, I regard KPIs are kind of almost like business as usual, and we're maintaining them. And yes, there are things that need to happen for us to continue on the KPI trajectory. And hence, typically they have kind of a known process, whether it's documented or not, but it's something that we're iterating on and we're keeping an eye on. Once something becomes an OKR in my book, then something is changing, something is being pushed, something is becoming key. I don't like to try and use OKRs as a way to manage KPIs. Because that's it becomes a function of change that we're trying to bring to the organization and bring the attention of the whole organization towards these maybe 3 main OKRs that we have, which then entails either changing a process or building a process that gets us there, or experimenting towards a result that then will build a process once we get there. So that's kind of how I've been viewing it. So like I mentioned, early stages is more about de-risking certain aspects of the business. As we grow the business, I use OKRs as a very good telltale as to what process we're creating, changing, and that's besides kind of your operational stuff. Like there's other constant decisions, and I would say you're mentioning like we want everybody to kind of operate in a certain way. I think a lot of that actually falls on culture more. So once you start talking about we're going to make data-driven decisions, our decisions are based on data as kind of a big factor, but we can go against the data, and these are the cases where we go against the data. We talk about being fast, or we talk about like some of the things, like each company has its own culture, right? And how we even deal with each other, and how do we challenge each other, all of these things becomes part of the culture. And this is stuff that is also very hard for you to write a process for, right? So you just need to exhibit it as co-founders, which then is apparent to your team, including the leadership team and the rest of the team. And there are things that are very important for the business that you really can't put a process around. And this is where I think being very, very vocal about what is our culture, and making it visible and showing very good examples of this happening, it helps us achieve what a process would achieve.
Not all the risk signals are easy to identify, or actually not even visible. Which variables are super important to visualize?
I would say it's even more bigger than the risks that are visible versus invisible. I think founders overall have a challenge because we're always trying to win, and we miss doing something. That's one of my biggest regrets at Tribal. One of my biggest regrets at Tribal is we did not invert enough. What does this mean? It means that I've been becoming more and more like reflecting on stuff that I read a long time ago, but didn't apply. Charlie Munger, and what Charlie Munger talks about, the inversion mental model, and your ability to look at the lens of inverting a problem. What this means is that we can think about how do we win, right? We always think about how do we win as founders, and we build a strategy about how do we win, where to play, how to win, right? And what are the things that we need to build. But I don't know if we think enough about how do we not lose. Because I mean, when you read a lot about inversion and that mental model, and how Charlie Munger really is a big champion of this way of thinking as one of the key mental models he relies on. He basically says, like, we are successful because we are avoiding the bad decisions and bad mistakes of others. So when we go back to kind of what is that risk, I would say the biggest risk is actually not thinking about risks enough, right? And not just thinking about how do we win, but also think about how do we not lose. the way I started kind of framing that in the company towards the end is actually more about what are the zeros in the system. What I mean by that is you can do a massively good job, let's say in marketing. So let's say we score 1,000 and you multiply 1,000 by another great job in product, and that's 10,000, and you multiply it by X and Y and different functions or different milestones that are key. But then you multiply all of this by zero. What's the result of 100,000 times 10 times 10,000 times zero? The answer is zero. So I started kind of having a more disciplined way of using the inversion model and understanding what are the zeros in the system. And right now, honestly, with AI, it's so easy. Like you can easily think about, hey, how do I succeed in kind of this market penetration? Or how do I, and then you simply ask, like, how do I do this? Like, think through this problem with the inversion model and think of, let's say, the top 3 factors, and each one will have 3 or 4 sub factors, and break it down for me. You will start reading all the things that can potentially go wrong in the business and the risks to the business. And then you, as a founder, have the ability to say, yes, this is a problem now. This is not a problem now. And this is one of the things that we need to keep a very close eye on. That kind of discipline in managing the business, especially as it scales, becomes very important. And honestly, even in small stuff like fundraising. We're currently obviously talking to some investors, but like the fundraising process, like how can I have a very successful fundraise, invert the problem, and like how can I really fail or the fundraising can completely fail? How would that happen? And you just even run it by AI and it'll give you all the factors that you need to avoid and all the mistakes you need to avoid. So I've been kind of very big on following that and making sure that I understand what is it that I need not to do, as opposed to what do we do.
Interesting. You've been through entire market cycles, booms, crashes, political shift. Which risk factors do you think founders most often underestimate early on?
I mean, I think I would say the typical that things are much harder than you think they are, and they probably cost a lot more than you think than you think it's going to cost. The I would say, I mean, obviously it's very nuanced depending on obviously stage business and industry, but again, I think I would just fall back on the same comment here that I think one of the biggest risks as you're going through all of these things is you not thinking about risks. That's my takeaway, honestly, that I have during all of these changes. You think you have a much higher, you are more immune than others, and I think it's very important to try and take lesson from how others have been failing in decision and taking certain decisions, and just understanding the failure paths and just keeping that top of mind. I think that's super valuable.
And when somebody's, is trying to raise capital, right? There is this balance between, I believe that this company will succeed, right? And you're sure about that. But also how to be transparent with the investor and saying, this might fail, right? It's always that possibility. How do you balance those two things?
I think a lot of the investors that we talk to, that especially institutional investors, you probably don't need to give them that disclaimer. I would worry too much about that as we're talking about family and friends. And I mean, ideally, you're talking to these guys as your accredited investors, and they're coming on board and stuff like that. But I would say, in a lot of the cases that I have had angel investors come on board, especially those that maybe it's kind of one of the very first few times that they do that, I try to, as much as possible, talk them out of it.
Okay, perfect.
And Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty bad, but if these are folks that haven't done this before, I try to push back on like, hey, this might not work. Like, this is going to be X. Are you sure you want to put this amount? Like, what is that compared to your rest of your portfolio? You should not be putting like more than 5 or 10% or 15% of your savings in the like a VC class or a startup, the in other startups as an angel investor. Like, is this what you really want to do? So I try to do that a lot more with kind of the angels,
Yeah.
but I think the VCs know what they're getting into. A lot of the institutionals and the family offices know exactly what they're getting into, and I think they will survive without my advice.
It's not the first rodeo, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and at some point, you have a mission and you're following that mission. But the reality is sometimes the metrics don't show the traction that you are expecting. And when you see those metrics are not showing the traction, could be for a lot of variables, right? And you know, depending on the entrepreneur, sometimes one keep pushing, and other people is like actually like 5 or 10 years ago, it was like this idea of you got to pivot all the time, right? Pivot, 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 and so how to find the balance between, look, it's not like I'm stubborn. I think this is going the right direction, even when the KPIs are not showing exactly that. Versus, let's try something else. Every time it's not working, let's try something else. And probably we are not waiting enough time to show that traction, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't want to be like stupid stubborn, right? I think stupid stubborn is where you're hearing kind of other people's advice, or you're seeing market signals or customer signals, and you're not taking it in and evaluating it. That's one. The other thing is you are trying to do the exact same thing over and over again, and not changing kind of course or iterating or experimenting, like I mentioned. And you're right, like there are many folks that are out there today, many big companies in the AI world who have been iterating on their problem for the last 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden their breakthrough came. Like I think when you look at some of these, the coding platforms, the likes of the Lovables and others, you'll hear the story of some of these companies, and they've been at it for like 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden they can go from 0 to 100 million ARR in just a few months, right?
Mhm.
But I think I would say definitely the two things that I would say helps you succeed during these times are trying to be as nimble and as lean as possible as an organization. That gives you, because I think burn is poison, and we got hurt by scaling too fast, actually. So I'd say burn is poison. So being nimble gives you the affordability to be a little bit more stubborn in cases, right? And
Mhm.
then the second thing is how you handle kind of signals, and how do you process signals and advice from others, and tests and experiments and the results of those. And if you run out of ideas, I think it'll be pretty bad that you will try to continue the exact same thing and try the exact same thing, hoping that the results will be different, unless you have an insight that other people don't, unless you have a bet on the market that other people don't. And usually that's the case, but also usually it's just, you know, you not wanting to give up.
It's a very thin line between one or the other, right?
Yeah.
And also sometimes there are external factors that are pushing you to steer on one or the other side, and it's not easy for an entrepreneur to make the right decision.
Yeah. Yeah. The early stages are always very difficult. You need to be, yes, the easiest way is if you don't have a list of things that you want to test and you ran out of those and you've checked all of them and you can't really fill anything else, and there's no very good reason why you should go back and test something because something happened in the timing, or something happened in the technology, or something happened in the market, or this applies to a new market. Like if you start running out of ideas, and you're not hearing anything new that's helpful, it starts to become almost obvious that it's just a little too stubborn there, maybe.
And isn't one option in the case of entrepreneurs that are a little stubborn? I think it's a great combination for solo entrepreneurs or stubborn entrepreneurs to have a steering committee or a board of advisors, a mentor. Those are kind of like the kind of solutions for those type of profiles, right?
Yeah, I think it's very good to have someone from outside the firm who can have some sort of kind of an objective view, who's spotting you, right? Like, I think it's like you're in a gym or something and someone is spotting you, just making sure you're not taking on too much. I think that's very helpful. It can also be risky, because I think you should always, as an entrepreneur, be the filter of ideas that falls on you, as opposed to following. You need to be filtering, right? So you're going to get a lot of ideas. I think it's more of the filter than versus follow that makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur.
How would you define an entrepreneur? What do you think is an entrepreneur?
Define an entrepreneur, or do you mean like the characteristics of an entrepreneur?
The characteristic of an entrepreneur.
It's funny, because the research that I did at NYU was all about actually the personalities, and using a data-driven way to actually measure that. We back in the day, we used a lot of the content generated by founders, and we ran them through AI that detects kind of the different personality attributes, and then we ran a lot of algorithms to figure out what is it that makes an entrepreneur successful, or what increases the chances of an entrepreneur to being successful. The interesting thing that we found in our research was that there is no silver bullet. So there is no one attribute. Like, this is not like a one thing that the entrepreneurs are a personality attribute or characteristic that would make an entrepreneur successful. I know a lot of people talk about resilience and having kind of the ability to maintain, and I believe in that stuff. But I'm talking about actual personal characteristics. The one thing that actually came up that was very interesting is that when you start looking at pairs of attributes, you will find that empathy is actually very highly correlated with successful entrepreneurs coupled with other characteristics. So what this means is that if you have high empathy, and, for example, have high creativity, that was a profile that we kind of picked up on, for example, the profile of Reid Hoffman. So this pairing of empathy and being creative is a profile. I think we had a few other profiles where empathy was coupled with other characteristics that made that shine. And I believe the reason why empathy comes in is because, number one, I think you can potentially, coupled with other attributes, it makes you very successful at relating with your teams and execution. It can very much relate to empathy towards the customers and understanding and identifying the problems. It becomes very high with potentially even your own ability to have kind of self-awareness as well. So I think there were attributes that we saw paired with empathy that really make an entrepreneur shine. So I would say having high empathy overall, and this is really based on data, was very, very interesting. So if you want to increase your chances, I would say having a little bit more high empathy and practicing that is one attribute you'd want to build. It's not the silver bullet, but coupled with something else that you're really smart at or really good at, it's going to be very powerful.
One of the things that every time I talk with an entrepreneur, different type of companies, big, small, tech, no tech, whatever. One of the phrases that came up is, "I started a company because I was unhireable." Have you heard that before?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've seen it in some of these big companies, like some of, was it Bloomberg that got fired?
Uh,
And yeah, I mean, yeah, you do see it when people are put in the situation. They'll just do it.
so basically, it can be some relationship with I had to start a company because I have to either demonstrate to the people that I was good enough, right?
Yeah.
Or I cannot fit in a normal structure because my
Mhm.
mind works in a different manner. So it seems like there are specific variables involved. There is something in the entrepreneurship mind that is different, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I believe so. But I also believe that there are other folks. I would say there's something in the mind, but I would say it's something that's also, I wouldn't say teachable, but the environment can get you into it. Or sometimes it's very uh, like it's not apparent that you can be a great entrepreneur because you've been kind of in a corporate job for the last 20 years or something like that, or you started in a corporate world and you can't really think of a world that looks different. So I also think there's a part muscle as well and hard work. And yeah, there are some that are just born with the talent, but I think hard work can also make anybody a very good entrepreneur.
Yeah, I agree. I think most people believe they know entrepreneurs has something special. I believe it's just probably a little stubbornness. It's like I have to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And nothing else really matter. Let's move forward, and that can be also dangerous, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And that attitude exists with a lot of entrepreneurs and with a lot of folks that are not entrepreneurs today, but could very well be.
Yeah, as part of the board of director of Endeavor Egypt, I assume that you have the chance of speaking with a lot of very successful entrepreneurs. Um, it is something that when you speak with someone, you kind of like identify in that person immediately, and you say it has something special.
Yeah, you feel it. You feel it. Sometimes you feel it in the way they speak. Sometimes you feel it or see it in the results of the business. Sometimes it's their aspiration and their hunger as well. I mean, you always see it. You see something. You see the signs. Yeah, for sure. I mean, today I had two of those calls already.
And when was the day that you was probably working for someone else, and you said, "I want to be an entrepreneur," or "This is not for me," or is a point of inflection, a moment that you remember that was this was the moment I realized there is no way back. I was to be not an employee anymore. I wanted to start my own company. That's what I wanted to
Well, the bad news, my friend, in answering that question is I've never worked really in a corporate before, except
do.
at Klar, which acquired assets of Tribal, and that's
Mhm,
kind of when I was. But I also didn't feel like like an employee per se. I mean, it was a very good environment for you to act like an entrepreneur,
mhm.
and it was another fellow on Endeavor Entrepreneur, Stefan, of course.
Yeah.
So from day one, like when I started, I actually started in the family business. So I was running kind of the family business, one of the markets for the family business.
Mhm.
But I will answer the question. But since then, I've been kind of building my own companies. But the very memorable conversation that I had with my father, because I will tell you, maybe the sign of not enjoying what you're doing is like you don't want to get out of bed. So it did come and it did happen that like you wake out of bed and you are not able to just get out and like think about what the day holds for you. And that's a really bad sign. And this is when I did have a conversation with my father and telling him, like, I know, like, you're an electrical engineer, I'm an electrical engineer. I know the plan was always to kind of carry this forward and run with it. But like, I really am very much interested in tech. And this was back in 1999, right? So
Okay.
it's a long
So
time ago.
even previous to the big boom of the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was like during that exact same time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in the tech world. And I think that's the future for us. And I should spend more time doing that stuff. My father is probably the best entrepreneur that I've seen, and my biggest inspiration, to be honest,
Oh,
because
that's very nice. That's
yeah,
nice.
he's yeah. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of him and the work ethic that he has, but also the risk taking and his ability to tell me to go and do your thing and just yes, like yeah, this is where the future is. Of course, you should focus on this and. Yeah, he's been supportive in the process ever since. They still go back to him with questions and with support, and he's my favorite mentor.
Now I understand where it comes from, this craziness of just jumping an airplane from Egypt and go to
Yeah,
Latin America and open
exactly.
3 4 countries, like, it's nothing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he gives you the support, both the mental support and the actual physical support to just don't worry about it. Just let's go do it.
And once you did a lot of fundraising in your life, so for several companies, what happened the day after you fundraise? You have the money in your bank account, right? And first of all, what happened in your mind, right? It's like, okay, now some people gave me all this money, and I got to do something with this, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that stress? Is energy? What?
yeah. It's very interesting. Like I'm sure it comes for a lot of entrepreneurs with relief. Like, hey, I'm done fundraising, and it's relief because of a very different spectrum. It's relief that maybe it's a relief that, oh my god, I saved the company, like we were about to close, and now we have the money in the bank. From a relief, the other kind of relief is like, hey, I don't need to go out and fundraise. I can actually be talking to customers, not investors now. There's different levels of relief that you get. It just depends on where the company has been and what round it is. Is it your series A or B or C or whatever? So I think that's definitely the relief factor for very different reasons becomes one. The other thing is definitely responsibility, but in fact, actually, I'm not trying to put a plug for Endeavor, but I actually vividly remember being selected in Mexico City as an Endeavor entrepreneur in 2011, because that is probably the biggest, most heaviest moment for me once we were selected. It was like, oh my God, like now I'm part of this group. And you have all of these amazing entrepreneurs. Like, I really need to kind of really step up the game massively, right? So I'd say the the Endeavors selection was probably more than the fundraising selection for me.
Yeah, fantastic. And so we talk about, the day after you fundraise. Now let's talk about the day after you sell your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, I realize is that most people that sell their company the day after, or probably the day after, but in the next month or year, there is a feeling, there is a lot of mental stress going on, right? Because people believe, okay, if you sell your company, you have a lot of money in the bank account, all your problems are solved. It doesn't seem to work like that, right? Could you tell me a little bit, how was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, our sale was crammed down. Like, we had to do a strategic exit that wasn't necessarily the best outcome for everybody, but I would say it comes with a certain it can come with a certain void as well, that what you've built is now, unless it's taken into an entity and it's going to continue its life and you're going to be part of that, then you're excited about the new culture and environment, and this will makes it a lot easier. But I would say it's more like um I would say it's hard to say, honestly. Like, I can't say I experienced it, that massive kind of I don't know what to do next feeling that I've heard others honestly go through, but I can't say that I kind of felt that lostness. And there's always purpose in after the acquisition in terms of what to do next. And yeah, I mean, we're continuing the work, we're building towards that. So that was a big part of it. And just in general, I've been always keen on, like, any time that I have during weekends, get back to coding, stay familiar, continue to learn again and again, like, what the heck is going on in the world? What's this, all of this AI stuff? Let's code this. Well, I have an idea that does this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's build a tool that helps me be more productive when I think about this. I think these things have kept me, less lost in terms of, like, where am I and what am I going to do next and stuff like that. It became, I think, part of the founder resilience that you build is during that time is to have a multitude of projects and multitude of experiments that you're working with, that sucks out of that feeling that, there is that void, or there is that. And some people say, well, it's better for you to take some time off and completely disconnect. This has never been advice for me. I have never felt that this is good advice for me.
I normally say that entrepreneurs, we are like gamblers, right? It's like we don't gamble for the money; you gamble for the gamble experience, right? And it's kind of like what happens with me, and I feel like with other entrepreneurs as well. We enjoy the process. Probably the only difference is some people like to grow, to be the person in charge of growing the company to a certain size. Some other people prefer just like the rush of starting from scratch and then abandon the company to someone that can put the company together, organize it, and stabilize it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think also, like, I see it, it's almost like you're dating ideas. Like, it's like going out on a date, you became single, and now you're, like, out and trying to learn to meet new people. It's meet new ideas. And which one is it that you want to spend the rest of your life with? Right. That's pretty much it for me. And it's been kind of that experiment of the rush of identifying and seeing ideas, and what is it that I want to continue to learn and build. Let's discover that. Let's find what that is.
We are almost closing this interview. And the last question is, what would you say to the 17, 18-year-old Amir if you could speak to him and give him an advice?
Yeah, that's a good one. The 17, 18-year-old Amr, what would you tell him? um, I would say probably, I would say stay naive, because if I wasn't naive about a lot of the things that I've done, I probably wouldn't have done them, and they would have looked a little bit too hard. I was very naive about many, many things, but it was a very good experience, like very learning, and it kind of ended up being turning me into what I know and what I do today. So I would definitely indirectly kind of try to pass on the message of continue to be naive as I did and as I was.
Amir, thank you very much for
Thank you,
joining
buddy.
me. And Born to Unicorn, it was a blast having you here and speaking with you. I really appreciate your
Thank you, Mark.
humility and all your recommendations and knowledge.
That's so
Thank you very
kind of
much
you.
for joining us.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so bye bye.
Goodbye.